What is up, action takers? Welcome back to the show. In the studio with us today is Sean Phalon. Sean is the founder of Get a Rate, an innovative and AI-powered look at mortgages and lending. Super interesting conversation. We cover a lot of topics, everything from identifying that a market is hot to trot and something you want to be involved in, how to actually start innovating and screening that process, how to lead people along with you. And to me, one of the key topics is radical transparency. Listen, we're going through a really interesting and innovative time in human history. And listen, you know this, I know this, we all know this, but one of the key things I think that's happening is millennials and Generation Z, we feel like we're being lied to. We need that transparency from our companies, our businesses, and our influencers. You are going to dig this conversation. We're going to get you to that six figures. You are in the right place at the right time. So listen, DJ, run the tape. Yo, Sean, what's up?
How are you? Good to see you, Mark.
Yeah, Sean, it's good to see you too. Can't wait to jam. You've built up a very impressive portfolio of businesses, and just kind of talking here before the episode started, you know, we're kind of talking about books a little bit. So I want to hear from you. You'd mentioned Atomic Habits being one of your favorites. Why is Atomic Habits such a great book?
I like it because when I read it, the content of it was actually unexpected. When you hear the word atomic habits, you think of an explosion, you think of an atomic bomb, and you think, all right, I'm going to read this book that tells me about how to, make a huge impact in business. But it's not about that. It's actually about putting your habits down to an atomic, as in almost a cellular, singular, the one single action that leads to the next, that leads to the next, and that type of sequence, and how to create those habits. So my brain works where I always need systems. I always want the right processes. I always want everything, flowing the right way, knowing exactly what the next step is. So it really spoke my language in how to build habits, translate that into business, family, the whole bit, and loved every word of it.
Dig it. Yeah. I was actually talking about this topic in a networking group the other day. We were talking about clothing. I don't know how we got on clothing. And I brought up, I feel like we spend way too much time thinking about clothing. Why can't we just all be like Zuck and have the same thing in our closet? Just wear the same thing every day,
Totally.
It'd be a lot easier. I don't know if my wife would go for that so much, but.
No, it is. A V-neck t-shirt and a hoodie and jeans and Converse is the way to go.
I agree. Maybe not Crocs. I'm not quite there yet, but listen.
No, me neither.
Yeah, do what you want to do. Cool. So, all right, Atomic Habits. And the reason I was interested in that is I have the book on my bookshelf yet. Right now, I just haven't gotten to dive into it just yet. So, let's Sean, let's kind of go back in time a little bit, right? So, Sean, you're age 19. You're about to live your best life, your dream. Why get into finance? What was the impetus for that decision?
So it was really economical. At the time, I wanted to get into architecture. I'd always been into it as a kid and was possibly looking at a few other options. But I did a Google research at the time to figure out the cost. I had just finished my first year of college, wasn't a fan of it, but figured if I'm going to go do this for 3 or 4 more years, I want to study something that I'm interested in, right? And I found out that what these architects made was not that great. And the economics of it wasn't very enticing to me. And that was the first time I think I realized that I really enjoyed the thrill of accomplishment. I love the process of making money. I like that business side of it. So I still believe today, and did back then, that people either need money themselves or they need something to do with their money. So I looked on the finance side of the world, and at one point, I sat in my car for 2 days straight, and I filled out about 63 job applications. And the first 2 companies that called me back were both mortgage companies, and that's how we got started.
Very cool. This reminds me of something I learned from or heard from John Lee Dumas back a few episodes ago. Was you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
I like that.
Yeah. So listen, props to you for recognizing this might not be the game that I want to play.
Yeah.
So the other challenge though is you don't want to do something you don't love. So what was your experience like when you started getting into the mortgage business?
So in the beginning, I absolutely hated it. I thought I would love it because of all the money you could make. I thought I would enjoy it because it had some competition to it, right? It was sales oriented, and I'm a very competitive individual to a fault. But what I quickly realized is there was in between going out, getting the business, closing the business, getting that thrill of putting a deal together and closing it, in between all that was a whole lot of paperwork and a whole lot of processes and a whole lot of very tedious tasks that needed to be done. And when you start, right, you really need to do everything. Otherwise, you're just not going to know how to do a lot of the things that you need to do. And so for several years, I did that. I went through a couple of different types of business models within the mortgage business. But in the beginning, it drove me nuts until eventually, a few years later, after launching a division of a consumer direct type of division with a mortgage company, was internet related, got out of that and started my own branch with a partner of mine, and began to put the pieces together and hire the people, and realized I don't like this business, but I can't find anything else that can make me this kind of money that I wouldn't have to go back to college for. So I need to figure out a way to work on the only things that I like doing in the business and hire everybody else to do the same thing. So I started to read articles and read books and talk to other people in the industry, and began to piece together those team members that would allow me to do just that.
So, I mean, let's say that you were not able to find people to do things you like. Do you think you could have stuck with it? Right. I think that, just to give you a little context, like I had this kind of like grit and bear it mentality that I think a lot of people have. I'm going to keep doing my 9-to-5 day job that I hate. It's soul sucking. I wake up looking at the ceiling on Mondays and I'm not happy. But the solution of finding people to help, I mean, find people to do what you don't like to do, right? That's the game.
Yeah, exactly. And it was financial was a big part of it, because I needed to be able to do enough business to take some of those margins and to hire people and pay and front people a salary, right? And to be able to have some reserves and have money allocated to where I knew we could support these people in the event of a downturn. We could support them as well, right? We didn't want to take off and then come crash landing down. So it was one of the scariest things I've ever done, actually. Number one, because I'm a bit of a control freak. And now I've been working on that for 7 years, but it was letting go, but it was also from a business standpoint, right? You're an entrepreneur, taking that leap and cutting people checks and understanding that now I have not only people to manage, but I have the workload, the productivity, the profitability to manage, when before it was just myself.
So what was that point where you said, I'm actually able to onboard people? I mean, because I think intrinsically, we all understand that, like, when I get to a certain point, then I'm going to sit on a beach drinking margaritas while my team does everything behind me. Right? Not to say that that's what you're doing, but like, what was that point where you said, okay, now it's time to bring on some people? Was this day one? Was this like once you hit 50K? Like, what was that point?
So we were doing, I was a little bit higher than an average producer. I really wasn't a big deal. At that point, it was just, I knew I didn't like doing it the way I was doing it. And to me, that was a breaking point that took, honestly, Mark, almost a year to get to the point where I just said, I'm sick of doing it this way. I've seen other people do it the right way. If I don't rip the Band-Aid off and just start, I'll take the hits. I'll take maybe passing up income. I won't get paid for a month or two, but I've got to start and to do this and to make sure that I can begin to build this business around myself and to work on the business and not just in the business all the time. So for me, honestly, it was probably a little too soon, maybe, but then maybe not, right? Because at the same point, I just started, and there were times where I said, nope, like I can't take as much money from these many deals at this month, because I need to make sure that our business is healthy, our branch is healthy, our team is healthy. Financially, I need to make sure that we're stable. But I found more thrill because I felt like I was progressing towards that than just waiting for the perfect right moment where certain goals were hit, certain finances were in place, and I felt comfortable. Because to your point, I feel like sometimes if you feel so comfortable, maybe you'll never do it, or maybe you won't do it the way you should do it, because now, well, everything's going okay, so I can tolerate this because it's all right. Instead, I just decided to rip it off, go cold turkey. If I had to take the financial hits, I had to take the financial hits, and I did. and it wasn't fun at times, but it was sacrifice that was necessary.
Anything we're doing, I think, has challenges. I mean, I probably did this the wrong way, but it cost me tens of thousands of dollars to get my podcast agency off the ground because I just hit every single speed bump on the way, One of the issues I think that a lot of creators and young business owners feel, though, is no one's going to do it as good as me. What do you say to someone who says that, Sean, no one can do it as good as me? What do you say?
Say that's a pretty small-minded heck of a statement. And I say that because I definitely said that many times, still say it from time to time. And then when I say it, I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that, right? But I think because if you're used to being a player for so long rather than a coach from time to time, a coach has a different perspective than a player. And so when you're used to seeing it from a player's perspective, not only do you think maybe out of these people doing these tasks, I'm the best, the truth of the matter is maybe you are. Maybe you are the best out of it compared to any number of people you might hire, but it doesn't mean that they can't get better. And it doesn't also mean that you won't be able to further your business because now your time is freed up doing more important work and not just the work that you're better than somebody else at. And I think I would say that just because you're better than somebody else, or maybe even the best in your company, on your team, what have you, at a certain task or a set of tasks, that doesn't necessarily mean those are the most important things for you to be doing just because you're the best at it.
One of the things that I've noticed in across the board, very successful business owners and operators is they empower others.
100%.
That, that's it. But it can be, that's a difficult skill to learn. I'm kind of curious, when you were coming up and you launched your independent business, mortgage lending branch, how were you learning these skills? Were you surrounding yourself with other like-minded individuals? Were you part of any mastermind groups? Like, how did you level up your game so that you could learn so quickly?
Man, I don't think I learned quickly at all. I think I did it the hard way, in a way that I wouldn't necessarily recommend a lot of other guys to do it. I did have some people who I watched carefully and I studied what they were doing from afar. I didn't know them well. I had worked under one guy for about a year and I handled a lot of marketing, but I got to see on a really just intimate scale everything he was doing on the business side and how he was doing it. So that gave me a lot of ideas, but I never really had that mentorship. So a lot of it was reading, a lot of it was late night research on YouTube, books, business books on a specific subject that I would get through half of the book. I'd say, well, this is not what I thought. And this is definitely not what I need right now. I need to find a resource for this, right? I remember at one point I was reading a business book and it got into the weeds so much into accounting and number crunching. At one point I thought, this isn't helping me. I need to just figure out how to manage and build teams and start very, very small. And so a lot of that journey was some trial and error. I think I definitely could have made it smoother had I chosen somebody or a group of people or a mastermind to bounce things off of. But at the time I didn't. I was just focused on getting some learning and some action under my belt. And I felt that the more I did and the faster I did it, whether I failed or succeeded, the faster I could learn and move our team and move the business along.
I really respect that idea of getting in the weeds, getting my hands dirty too. A really common issue I think that young entrepreneurs run into, right, Sean, is we're so caught up in the learning aspect, we don't realize that the doing is where the growth is. I took Spanish class, like 10 years of Spanish from elementary through high school. I couldn't speak any Spanish. 2 months in a kitchen, I was fluent, baby. Send me to Mexico. I'm good to go. So how do you balance that? How do you balance the learning and the execution? Are you like reading a book and then saying, I'm going to apply this. This is practical. I'm going to apply it today.
Yeah, no, great question. Now I feel I don't have a great balance, but I think I have a much better balance than I did. I'm much more of a doer rather than a thinker, which is a two-edged sword. Sometimes it works out great, sometimes not so great. And now I read on a regular basis. I try to get one particular book that I just know I'm going to enjoy the content and it's just going to sharpen my mind because I'm going to enjoy the content. It's going to refine me a little bit, just whether it's on a personal level or a subject that I'm just really interested in, because it kind of works a different side of your brain. And I try to read another book every month that's specifically going to be very, very practical. We were talking about it before we started, the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Very, very practical. Another one of my favorite books, The One Thing by Gary Keller, founder of Keller Williams. Great book as well. those books I specifically look for that are very, very practical, that I can take what I'm reading and immediately apply it to something, as in like tomorrow.
Mm.
Between podcasts, I listen to a lot of them, a lot of leadership stuff, more type of podcasts that are really going to make me think kind of outside the box and really question how I'm approaching something. But the one part I really loved about James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, was the whole notion of just starting. No matter how small it may be, no matter how simple, right? You need to start, and you need to learn as you go. Sure, there's time for learning, but you could always take 2 hours or 5 hours or 10 hours a week at night or in the morning and study and read and learn and listen. You could always have those times, but there is that time of doing that. If you spend the time where you're supposed to be doing and spending it with learning or researching or analysis, that time is lost, right? And so I've always believed that I can always take more time out of my day, out of my evening, out of my morning to learn. But those times during the day when the world is running, those times need to be filled with doing. And that's kind of how I balance it now.
I'm also kind of, so you bring up a lot of interesting points here, Sean. One of the points I find interesting is that, I have 5 hours in the evening. I have a couple of hours in the morning. That time often is regulated towards, I got to relax. Game of Thrones is coming on. I got to watch the Game of Thrones. And, I think about this a lot because, I think there's value in being able to unwind and watch a movie, watch TV. Sure. The flip side, though, is that like sometimes I feel like that time gets wasted. So have you just always had the mentality of go, 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 it's night, I need to put another 4 hours of work? Or did that shift take time to shift from, all the relaxation time to the more busy get after it time? How did that shift look like for you, Sean?
Well, if you can't tell, I'm naturally kind of a wound up kind of guy. I don't relax very well. 2 days from when this is recorded, I'm going to be heading out for a week in New England with my family. And it will be a challenge the first 2 days of just saying no to myself, to pick up the phone, to look at the email, to answer this, to not jump on things. And so that's a challenge. So I think if anything, I don't have to fight doing more. I have to fight myself and make sure at times I actually do less, and not just doing less, because sometimes I think if you're a wound up A-type kind of personality, you can fill your time with being busy. That's not actually accomplishing anything. Or maybe you're just doing the same work or micromanaging your team and they're fine. And you could be, if you're going to work, you could fill your time with doing other things, right? That you should be doing. And for me, that time, sure, do I like to relax, but like, I'm just not a big TV guy. Sure, there's a few shows that I might like to watch. I might like to binge watch from time to time, but like for me, it's rare. And I joke around with like my buddies. One of my favorite shows is Billions, right? I love that show. And all the guys, they would get way ahead of me on it, and they're talking about, I'm like, man, I don't know. And they're like, you're still on season 2. What in the world are you doing? I'm like, because I watched 3 episodes, and then like the next night, I'm not running to the couch to sit down. Like there's a lot of things on my mind that I want to get in that are frankly much more important than that. And so I've never been a kind of guy that just is in a rush to be entertained. I love accomplishment, even if it's something so small, Mark, as learning a new skill or refining it or understanding a concept that I was fuzzing on during that day. Or, there was a situation, a loan or a deal that we were working on that needed to be fixed, but it took me till 10 o'clock at night, but we got it figured out and we solved the puzzle. It's hard for me to sit down and relax if some of those things are left undone. And so that's kind of the root of where that comes from.
I even get a little bit antsy. Like if I finish an episode and how Netflix is always trying to push you on to the next episode, I start to get antsy. Like I need to like do some push-ups or exercise or feel like I'm at least getting something done.
Totally.
At the same time, one of the things, and I want to talk about your, the business you're focused on now, Get A Rate. One of the things that, I've heard you say, Sean, you basically are giving us a lot of Sean today, which I appreciate, talking about strengths and weaknesses and all of that. But one of the things you had mentioned was this business that you've started. You had a partner, right? To Get A Rate, you have a partner. Partnerships can go really freaking bad. What do you look for when finding a great partner?
So when I originally started my branch with my partner way back when, that was with a completely different company years ago. So Get a Rate, myself and the other executives here have known each other for a while, being in the business together and just in our common networks. And we came together a little while back to team up. But when I originally started that first branch, that first separate net branch with my partner at the time, we specifically chose each other because in wisdom, it fit because I was more of an outside kind of guy, more face to face with clientele, with referral partners, getting business. He was perfectly okay with sitting there at a desk and poring over paperwork from 9 to 6 every day. So we really complemented our strengths well. In me personally, that's still been a fundamental aspect of choosing a partner. There have been times, even on shorter term projects with, whether it's a real estate investing or maybe some other tech project or anything, where I've chosen somebody and I've deviated away from that mentality. And I think every time it's always come back to bite me because two of the same people with the same skill sets just aren't a great complement, or very rarely are, especially when there's just two of you. So they absolutely have to be a complement in some way, shape, or form to me. Otherwise, why? I don't need two of me, right? For a lot of reasons, I don't need two of me in the mix, right? So complementing your skill set is a big purpose.
And what about vision too, right? Because, you could have someone that complements your weaknesses. So this is one of the things that I think about. One of the fears that I have in starting any business is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you start a business with maybe a vision of it going one way, but based on the market that's changing, based on your customer base and the understanding you get of them, your business model might shift in a different direction. You might start offering a different product or service to, and that shift to me could be a dangerous point in a partnership, because you had both agreed this is where we're going, but all of a sudden you turn the car down another road. How, is that something you think about when starting up a new venture? How do you handle that?
Totally. It's a great point. And one that will more than likely happen at some point in the near future, because the world is very fast today, and what you could be working on, especially on some of the tech ventures I've been a part of, what you could be working on today, 6 months later, you didn't realize it, and now it's completely irrelevant, or a large portion of it's completely irrelevant, and now you have to completely rethink what you're doing. That's happened to me twice. And so to your point, vision, I think people believing in the core mission of what you're doing and your partners and those around you is absolutely crucial, because to your point, Mark, we had a project that we were working on, a hardware software component together that we were working on. And because life happens, it had to be put on hold for a little while. We picked it back up. We began work on it. Well, all of a sudden, literally 4 months later, we had 4 or 5 direct competitors after we did our intellectual property research. And it was going to be very, very difficult to finish this the way what we thought. And in one sense, we were kind of happy because it proved it was a great idea, because other people were pursuing it in the fast lane just like we were. But now we had to completely rethink how to make this novel again to protect our IP. So in that case, because the people on board really just believed in the overall mission, which was to streamline a process and to make it consumer to consumer, and to kind of really break down the barriers of the business lines that really kind of messed up that whole process, we still believed in the overall mission. So we went right back to it. It was, okay, we may need to redo part of it, how we're approaching it, maybe some of the functionality, but the core value of our goal is still there. So how do we make this novel? How do we adjust it? How do we make it to where it's sidestepping our competitors who are trying to do the exact same thing, but still is true to what our core value of this entire project was? I think coming back to that is so important.
Kind of like finding the niche within the niche, if I'm hearing you correctly, right?
Yeah. And sticking to, why did we do this in the first place, right? This was our mission in the first place. If that mission is still relevant, then we need to go back to that mission and figure out, how do we take the mission, as long as it's still relevant, because it may not be, right? But as long as it's still relevant, how do we then, to your point, adjust it? Maybe we take a small part of that mission and maybe we put all of our focus there.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, so I'm always hearing these nightmare stories about I don't want to put any bad juju out there. You know what I'm saying? But I want only smooth ventures for all the listeners out there in the beautiful internet world. But I think it's a great,
because that's all there are. There's never any problems. I mean, you know.
And frankly, if you're not experiencing any problems, you're probably doing something wrong, you know,
yeah, or nothing, right?
Or yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about Get a Rate, which is kind of your solution to mortgages. And it's kind of, I think, is a good pivot from what we were just, talking about here, Sean, because mortgages have been around a long time, brother. Long time. You talk about proven market models, mortgages are there. Everyone wants to own a home. We need loans. We don't have the money. The banks are there, right? So just help me out here. Why is Get a Rate something that's important to you, and why is it different from what's already out there?
So the model we created here was born out of a frustration with not just the industry in general, but also the way it was conducted. And not just the way it was conducted between the professionals, between the realtors, the attorneys, the title companies, all of the professionals, but a lot of our frustration was also how it was conducted from the professionals to the consumer a little bit, because we wanted to create a process that was completely transparent, but we also wanted to create a process that really melded the other sides, especially the real estate side of the transaction, together with the bank and the financing. And the way the world is with technology and how quickly you can communicate now today, you have agents, which are really the primary referral partners for loan originators on the banking side, but they're really part of the same team. There's that invisible line and barrier between what their role is and between what our role is on the bank. But truly, you're on the same team. Neither one of you get paid until the loan closes. Like, you both have the same goals. And so a few years ago, we began experimenting with how do we marry these two sides together, but how do we also make it very, very easy for the consumer to talk to the experts and have the loan originators use their expertise and not be bogged down with all of the paperwork and minutia and tedious tasks that we mentioned before. So fast forward a few years later, we came up with 3 components. We came up with a completely online mortgage process, which is not just a mortgage application. I think every lender in America has an online mortgage application, but it actually allows the customer in about 8 to 10 minutes to apply, to have their income, their assets, their credit completely verified, and the system will automatically run them through pre-underwriting, and they can get a pre-underwritten pre-approval right there in about 8 to 10 minutes right there on their phone. And they can even shop rates, they can shop products right then and there. We're rolling out at the end of this year. Hopefully at the end of this year, it'll be a combination, which it allows them to even link to the MLS and to shop for homes based upon the financing that we have. And they'll be able to shop for their payments right then and there. So it creates a stickiness for the customer to us because they have the resources right then and there. So that was really the first component that made it super easy for the client, the customer, to get their answers. Traditionally, Mark, originators, they don't want the customers to have those answers right there in front of them because they feel, well, if they don't like the answer, they're just going to leave me. But if you can walk them through the entire process and give them access to not just the financing, but the home shopping, the answers they want to, what's my payment going to be? How's this going to affect it? Can I afford a property that has different taxes than the other house I just looked at last week? Am I still going to be able to afford it? They'll be able to do all of that right there on that website. And so that's what we created for the consumer. And then we put together, again, with the consumer in mind, to our knowledge, it's the first artificial intelligence underwriting system that's been approved by Fannie and Freddie that's out there. It's proprietary technology. So I know you've dabbled a bit in real estate, and probably a lot of people on this podcast have. I think real estate entrepreneurs are maybe the biggest listeners of podcasts that I know. So I'm sure there's a few real estate people out there, but we all know that the one person who can make the transaction very, very difficult is the underwriter. It's not a secret. It is what it is because they're a human being, and human bias comes into underwriting federal guidelines. Just is what it is. So to create a solution for that, a few years ago, actually during the pandemic, we began to develop proprietary technology. It's an OCR technology and optical character recognition that actually scans the documents. It can scan it several dozen times take the actual characters, numbers, and letters on that document and pit it against what the guidelines need for it to be. If it suffices, our artificial intelligence actually clears that condition. So a human underwriter is not conditioning the file and is not looking for feel-good conditions. I don't understand the scenario, so I'm going to condition the heck out of it and ask for, your son's blood type and a sample of your mother's hair and all these other different things. No more, because it's simply to the letter of the law of what the federal guidelines are. So it's taken away not the human element of signing off on the loan, but the human element of having just human bias towards a situation, not understanding it. If the loan works and the paperwork meets the requirements for the federal government, our artificial intelligence system completely approves it. And it's made, it got rolled out about 5 months ago, and it's made lives a lot easier for the real estate professionals like the loan originators and the agents, but also for the consumer itself.
I mean, so I have an insurance background, by the way. I was in P&C industry for about a decade, and I could kind of see the technology shift coming. With every day, with every update of the CRMs and the quoting softwares, the enterprise management tools, they were removing people from every step of the process, inch by inch. More computers, more data. Now every single vehicle out there has a little electronic device that tracks how fast you're going and where you're at, and this type of thing, right? And like it or love it or hate it, it is happening. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that you would utilize that to remove the emotion, remove the red tape from the lending process. It was funny to me when you mentioned like asking for like hair type and DNA, because like when we bought our first home, it was like, you need more of what? You need documents, like you should. I mean, so many killed trees. It's a very sad thing. But I kind of want to get your opinion on this, Sean, as you're involved in a few different ventures. Like, what are your thoughts on, it sounds like what a lot of this comes down to is transparency.
Big part of it.
How important do you think it is that, when we're making our offers, when we're building our business, that there's transparency? And do you think there's a risk at being too transparent with our customers and client base?
No, and it's a philosophical question, really, Mark, right? Depending upon your industry. In my industry, what I can say is that one of the major problems that it has is consumers have a constant fear that professionals are colluding against them. They're not getting the right answers. I'm being lied to. How do I know I can trust? I mean, if you really think of the history of the mortgage business, at least the biggest portion of it in recent history was called something like a crash back in 2008 and 9. That was largely induced by a lot of the mortgage businesses out there. So there is a negative connotation, and a lot of it was because of the lack of transparency. Then Dodd-Frank came in, the government stepped in, and of course, completely 180'd it and made it almost impossible, right, for a time being, and the world has leveled out since. But I think transparency isn't important. I think it's crucial. I think it is maybe the most crucial element to working in financial sales or some type of financial sales in the future, because knowledge is everywhere. You can Google anything. And by the way, you can Google something and get the wrong information too, depending on who's putting it out there. But knowledge is absolutely everywhere. And you have the millennial generation, largest generation in history, which is also the most financially conscious generation in history, that will research the heck out of anything that has to do with finances. So doing business with this generation, and we're talking about millennials who could be on their third or fourth house now, right? A millennial could be almost 40 years old, and then you have Gen Z coming up behind them that has a lot of that wealth that they're catching from that wealth transfer from the baby boomers. So they're going to have a lot of money to handle a lot of different financial transactions over the next few years. And if they have a feeling of a lack of transparency, a lack of trust, they can't get answers quickly, they have to go through a barrier to get answers. Well, that's not something they've ever been used to in their entire life. And now on the most crucial and important financial transaction of their life, AKA buying a house, if they don't have that same feeling that they got when they shopped on Carvana, when they searched the sites to shop for the best rate for the hotel, for the best insurance rate that they could get out there, if they don't have that same feeling when they're buying a home, we're in trouble. And so that's where this philosophy has come out of, to make it not just easier and simpler for the consumer, but to make them feel like they're handling the transaction in a safe way, if that makes sense.
I like it a lot. And I like how you brought some psychology into it as far as different generations go, because I kind of agree. I feel like, you know, we've always had this habit, privacy, right? I value my privacy. I need my privacy. Privacy is important to me. But then we want to make sure that, you know, Netflix knows what to recommend next, right? Or, you know, we want to make sure that our GPS knows where the speed traps are, you know. So I'm really torn right now, you know, because I've lived kind of like in both sides of the pre-internet era and post-internet era, being 39 myself. I'm kind of torn by this thing, but I agree, Sean, that I think that the transparency piece is absolutely crucial. And love it or hate it, I heard Gary Vee talk about this the other day. You cannot change human nature. All these things, it shouldn't be this way. It should be this. It should be a different way. Why fight it?
Yeah.
That's not, you're not
battle.
Yeah. You're losing. It's a losing battle. You're not actually making progress ahead, trying to change your market, rather than saying, this is what the market wants, I'm going to give it to them.
Right.
I'm going to give them a better rate, more transparency. I'm going to make the home buying process much more simpler. Sorry, all you grammar please out there. Much simpler, because now I'm combining it with the MLS or with Zillow and these other parts, making the, you know, bringing everything together, making it more simpler, doing it on purpose. Right.
I didn't graduate college per the earlier part of the podcast, so you're good.
Okay.
Grammar.
Thank you. If you're mad at the gets more simpler, feel free to email me. We can chat about it on Twitter or whatever. So anyway, this is kind of a really long-winded way, Sean, of me kind of selfishly wanting to ask, like, we've seen this shift. You're seeing the market kind of develop in front of you. What's next? What's exciting to you? What's kind of like getting you out of bed in the morning saying, all right, these are the next opportunities? What's exciting to you?
That's a loaded question, Mark. The shift itself excites me. I came in on the tail end of the aftermath of all the craziness after that crash. I got in after all the fun was over, so to speak, and all the craziness was over. So I've seen rate spikes and I've seen slight recessions over the past 10, 11, 12 years in this business. And now we're going into what I believe is a major shift, not just from an economical standpoint, but also from the way the business is done. I think the virtual world, now you have the metaverse out there. Now you have digital real estate. Now you've got real estate in the metaverse. You've got NFTs, you've got crypto, you have everything turning digital, including your currency and real estate, which is at some point is even hard to wrap our heads around. Sometimes you have to do a double take. I'm excited at the fact that this is shifting, because in every shift, there's incredible opportunities for those who are willing to learn about how to ride with this shift and willing to take action on it. One of the things that we see coming down the pike, not just from a technology standpoint, because sometimes we kind of beat that like a dead horse, right? NFTs, crypto, this and that and the other, because it's an important part of our world now. But just from a personnel standpoint, Mark, in the real estate world, there's about 1.5 million realtors nationwide right now. There used to be about 1.1 to 1.2. So we've seen a massive increase because the market allowed for it. Everybody and their brother was buying a house. Money was almost free for the past couple of years. Now that all of those agents and loan officers and title reps and maybe even real estate attorneys, mom and pop shops, a lot of these professionals in the real estate world have to learn not just how to convert business and how to handle the volume of business, they have to learn how to get business again. And they have to learn how to grow their business in a downturn and how to survive that and how to adapt. Well, when you run lean and mean, it's easier to do. if you're a huge aircraft carrier and you can take a lot of blows and still make it through the other side, it's easier to do too. It's the guys in the middle who get beat up on a lot in these changes. So what we decided fundamentally to do, we talked earlier about kind of marrying the transaction of the realtor and the loan officer together. We rolled out this hybrid program because we do truly believe that over the next 5 years, the majority of the loan officers are going to be gone out of this industry. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that the ones who stay in their role is going to greatly, greatly change. I think we're going to see a shift like we did from the travel agents to the Expedias of the world, from the insurance world to the e-insurance that we're seeing even now. I think that's a big shift over the next 5 to 7 years. So in anticipation for that, we believe that with technology, with people's knowledge base growing on these things like home ownership the way it wasn't 20, 30, 40 years ago, we're putting together a program. We actually just rolled it out, of hybrid agents. And it is having a real estate agent actually become a licensed loan officer as well. Now, some people may be listening to this and their alarms are ringing off their head going, compliance, compliance, compliance. Well, it's taken us almost 4 years now to experiment with this model to figure out the right and compliant way to do it. So we are right now, and I don't know when this episode will be released, but we're working right now on actually finishing, God willing, over the next 2 weeks, acquiring a state chartered bank, which you do not need to pass licensing exam in order to be licensed in all 50 states. So we rolled out 2 pieces of this, Mark. One is it's almost like a multi-level marketing program where we allow people in the industry to participate in it, and they can recruit loan officers or hybrid agents who want to get licensed as loan officers onto the platform. And we bring them on as an independent contractor, and they can have 10 levels of overrides on that originator on all of the business that they do in perpetuity. And we allow that income to be paid out in perpetuity. They own that income, and it's actually willable to their estate as a contractor. So that can be passed on to their children, their grandchildren, their spouse, you name it. That was one part of it, because we believe that if you can get an industry and people who are working together to earn together, they'll stay together for a long time. The other part of that, and a lot of this comes as the result of creating these streamlined processes. We're saving massive amounts of money on the back end. We're saving a lot of money on overhead. Even just if you have 20 underwriters in a company, that can be over $200,000 a month in overhead, right? Yeah. When you have an artificial intelligence system that doesn't need to eat or drink or sleep in order to underwrite, your staff can be much, much more efficient and your capacity goes up. So the other side of it we did with the hybrid agents was, with the acquisition of a bank, they don't need to pass their tests, which is a major, major hurdle to them getting licensed as loan originators. So we put together a compliant way for them now to legally and in a scalable manner actually commission share and actually get paid a commission on the loans that they refer as licensed loan originators. And there's some in and outs of the compliance that we won't dive into today, but one of the pieces that we needed was a real way, AKA a true depository banking license, to roll that out in all 50 states seamlessly without the hurdles of passing tests, passing national tests and state tests. So once that acquisition is complete, we'll be launching this nationwide. We already have close to about 1,000 people waiting for this to happen. So we're excited.
Super smart. I love the evolution. And, you start talking about compliance, and it just reminds me of the word transparency. I feel like if you're being transparent about the process and you're automating it to remove emotional bias, like, it makes a lot of sense. And perfect example, ladies and gentlemen, if you walk away from this with one thing, it's these opportunities. We're going through a pretty volatile economic time, right? But that's where the gains are made.
Yes.
That's where the wealth is made. Sean, I want to get to the rapid fire here with you. Real quick, but where can people find Sean? Where's the best place for us to connect with you so we can learn more and get involved in this hybrid agency model?
Google Sean Phalon, S-C-A-N, last name is P-H-A-L-O-N. I'll pop right up. I don't have a very common last name, so it's pretty easy to find me. Or on Instagram would probably be the other easiest place. It's Phalon, my last name, _forward, FWD.
And guess what? I'm going to make it super easy for you all out there. Just click the link below. I'll
Cool.
put it right there. You see where my finger's pointing? Right there. Click it. All right, cool. So Sean, quick underrated, overrated, rapid fire here for you before you leave. You mentioned podcasts. What's your favorite podcast right now?
Probably Craig Rochelle.
NFTs, overrated, underrated?
Overrated.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
On an island by myself, well, with my family.
Fair enough.
Probably in the Caribbean, close enough to Florida to where I could hop into civilization if I needed to.
Yep. Hey, listen, it's beautiful down here. Join us in Fort Lauderdale. We're here. We're ready for you. What's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Man, scariest movie. It's a good one. I'm not really into scary movies for the simple reason that they stick on my mind for the next 4 weeks into any dark hallway I might walk into. So I would say the one that shook me the most was probably the Saw movies.
Yeah,
that series has a special place in my brain.
which we're trying to erase, right?
Yeah, it was almost gone, and then you brought it up. It's all flooding back.
Sorry, I'm just bringing back bad memories. Don't think badly of me. That's all. If you could sit next to anyone on an airplane, who would you want to sit next to?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, I don't think you go wrong there. And final question here for you, Sean. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Don't quit.
Great advice. Great advice. Sean, thanks so much for joining the After Hours Entrepreneur and providing some wisdom today, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Mark. It was awesome.
Bam. That conversation rocked. I feel like I could talk to Sean for like hours and hours and hours. And I definitely would encourage you to go check him out, follow him, do all that stuff. Links below, of course. And if you haven't yet, make sure you smash the subscribe button. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate the support. Now it's up to you. Go take action. Read the books, listen to the shows, take action, and go make it happen. You've got this. All right, I'll catch you here next time on the show, and make it a good one. Peace.